Alright, welcome back to more SOVL PvP. Today we have our first match in the second SOVL Discord Cup, and this time it's 1,000 points, which is cool. As far as I'm aware, this is the first 1,000 point tournament. I've never played a 1,000 point game before. I'm sure most of the people in the tournament haven't either, so it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to really be a race to see who can break the meta. Before we jump into our first match, let's take a look at the list that I submitted and talk about my thinking, because playing around with 1,000 points, there is a few kind of really wonky things you can do. First thing that jumped out to me as being potentially incredibly strong, double Doom Bell. Something like this, 2 Doom Bell activations, you get 2 Hex of Ruins, so 4 Hex activations, and just like, load of bodies. I was thinking this is going to be somewhat obvious, almost like Route 1 thinking. I'm sure other people would be looking at this. So yeah, I think this would be really strong. But maybe for those reasons, I didn't necessarily want to play it myself. I was also looking at Undead. I think the Bone Dragon's really cool because it's reanimated, so you can use reanimate on it. However, because there's a lot of Hex running around, I was kind of expecting a lot more horde units, lots of rats, lots of goblins as well. You can field like a lot of goblins at 1,000 points. And the skeletons, while they have crumble, actually probably not a great matchup against other hordes, simply because they're fighting with skill 2 versus skill 3. Another list I looked at was trying to shoot off these hordes that I expected with something like this, but then I just, I didn't want to get accused of just copying Kenji with a shooty goat list. So what did I finally land on? To actually continuing with the tradition of submitting lists from armies that I have very little experience with, decided to go with Dwarves. Now I think I've played well over 500 ranked games at this point, and I think it was around like 20 games with Dwarves, and I think a lot of them were like really early on when I was learning. It's just not a faction. It's not that they don't appeal to me or anything. I think I've just been playing other factions. Why Dwarves? Well, I was thinking, yes, they can put out a good number of bodies themselves, but their native kind of strong, high defense could maybe mean that they can stand toe-to-toe against those hordes. This particular configuration, I'll be honest, I don't have great reasons for it. I was just playing around to see what would fit into 1,000 points. But it's fairly mixed, actually, looking at it now. Good number of bodies. Couple of ambushing units, actually 3 with the ranger captain as well as 2 units of miners who can just kind of like hold their own. 1 really punchy unit of berserkers, and then 1 really kind of tanky with fearless, I guess, sit on objective and go nowhere unit in the vets. Little bit of shooting from 2 stone throwers, and then the unit of crossbows retinue, and then 2 flying machines. You can see how I've kitted out the heroes here, just cruelty, both with the ranged weapons and then cruelty on the ranger captain. And yeah, everything else pretty standard. Pumped a few more points into like increasing some of the units where here and there. So yeah, that's the list. Let's take a look at what my opponent's going to be running for this first match. So our first match of the tournament is against YoMommaGoofy, and holy hell, this is a scary list. So while I was just like distracted by the double Doom Bell and all the little rats, completely missed that you can run 4 units of long rifles, which is absolutely terrifying. I think this is actually a really cool, really well crafted list, because it's got really like 3 elements. Yes, it's got the 16 long rifle shots, lethal shots, really nasty. But it's also got a core of the bulk of rats with 1 Doom Bell, not 2, but that's still enough to kind of, they can do work with the double Hex of Ruin, and then a couple of, Ratkin monstrosities as well. They're have frenzy by default, so they're not the best when, well, they're still good, but like they're not best when paired with Doom Bell, which gives units frenzy. Can be a bit of a waste there, but yeah, with just this number of conscripts, that Doom Bell and Hex is still going to do work. Slightly curious choice of, or interesting choice of the Ratkin Chieftain with a retinue of conscripts here. I guess that's really nice that if they can get into combat with opposing commanders, right? Oh no, their thing is the Deadly Strike, which is against multi-wound targets. Yeah, so maybe just a piece to kind of shore up their fight against things like giants and tanky stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. I think my opponent's just going to be able to sit back with the long rifles. I think this match is going to come down entirely to what happens with the two copters. On the one hand, they're probably definitely the units in my army that are most vulnerable to the long rifle shooting, but they're also the only units in my army with like the speed to go after them and charge them. So I'm really going to be hoping for final turn. I'm going to need to be really careful in screening them and not really taking any risks with them, and hopefully, I don't know, gets in a position where they could charge a unit of long rifles that have already shot that turn and then maybe kind of cause havoc in the backfield. But yeah, because one shot from any one of these units can just kind of take that out in one go. The maps are different for 1,000 points. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out in terms of terrain, because hoping again for, weirdly against shooting, hoping for not much terrain. And the reason I say that is long rifles have that annoying thing where they can, like, because they can move like a normal unit, they can dip into a forest, shoot, and then dip back out again. But yeah, let's jump into this one and see how it goes. All right, here we are post-game. Unfortunately, SOVL replay is still playing up, but thankfully I was recording my screen, so that's what we're just going to have to put up with here. Gone ahead and jumped forward to the end of my deployment. Stacked up a little bit more heavily on the right here, hoping that if my opponent has a lot of combat units here on my left, then yes, the miners could tag, but then even if they die, the veterans could follow and hopefully hold that point with their kind of fearless tankiness. And I've kind of stacked more. The Berserkers, probably the choppiest unit, Commander's unit. Both Commander's units in the copter on the right over here. It's an interesting map. Not too many opportunities. I suppose there is one here for my opponent to kind of duck in and out with those long rifles, expecting to set up one, possibly two in the corner in the woods here. But yeah, let's take a look. So interesting deployment from my opponent, very heavy on my right flank. I'm thinking I don't mind this. What this does mean is that I should hopefully be able to kind of win over here on the left objective and potentially hold that. My opponent only has really the Doom Bell, which don't necessarily want to be getting into combat, and one unit of conscripts, and of course all of the long rifle shooting, which is all bunched up and for now kind of screened behind all of the conscripts. My opponent decides to take a shot first at the stone thrower. Understandable choice, I think. At least for these early turns, that's the unit my side that's by far going to be able to do the most damage to them. Unfortunately though, with the protected crew and the long range, means they're shooting on a 5-up, and that's 4 misses. So as I said in the beginning, I'm gonna want to try and protect my 2 flying machines, 2 copters for as long as possible. I think they're going to be really key. There is potentially a potential of a flank here on this unit of long rifles. I think that's probably what I was looking at there. If I can get here to get into the flank, but yeah, whether it's, got to decide whether or not I want to take that and be aggressive to go after these, or try and be a bit more patient, because the issue is if this unit flees, I'm not sure they'd have the movement to get all the way around and off the board. And even if they do flee off the board, then my pretty valuable copter is kind of left in the open to then get shot off by another unit. I'm terrified of these long rifle units, particularly with the copters. I feel like they can take them out in one blow. So one other consideration I have now, though, is how to sequence and I guess what to do with my shooting, because I've got the 2 stone throwers and the unit of crossbows with the hunter. I'm torn between trying to wait and open up wait for a shot to open up on any of the long rifle units, particularly one that's not in the woods in cover would be ideal, versus maybe targeting all of it at something like one of the monstrosities. So at this stage, I'm kind of holding off that decision, seeing what opportunities kind of present themselves. I'm also not too worried about this kind of bulked up units here, because of the miners, I put the, obviously they don't have ambush, but the berserkers back here, because in my opinion, they're a lot more valuable unit than this general's one. I don't mind these guys getting into combat. They have I think like defense 4. The commander's a little bit choppy anyway. I can kind of form a line facing, and it's going to be hard for my opponent to really get around the flanks and get much more than a face-on charge, at least in turn 1. So I can kind of like hold the line on this side while hopefully winning over here once everything else gets involved. As always, when playing against the Doombell, I am a little bit afraid of my opponent getting everything in combat in the same turn. So maybe not turn 1, but thinking about like turn 2. And just as I said, that opportunity opens up for me to take a shot on the long rifles, and I take it. Some more 5-up rolls from my opponent's long rifles, and they miss those as well. But yeah, trying to be very aware that I don't want, a bunch of charges to happen all in the same turn, because then that's just like maximizes the utility of that once per game Doombell activation. So I kind of want to drip feed. If I can have a combat here this turn, maybe a combat here over that turn, not present a like really obvious turn, or a turn where it's like really obvious to use it. So that was another unit of the 4 long rifles, followed by the unit of 2, all taking shots at the stone thrower. And that's another. All of them missing. I was joking with my opponent that serves them right for dressing them up as stormtroopers in all white. But for those keeping score, I think like between the kind of 5-up saves as well, what's that been? 14 now total, 5-ups that my opponent hasn't been able to make with those long rifles. So I'm not going to complain, but the luck of the dice so far definitely going my way. So here I'm just trying to, move up, activate units earlier on in the turn where, it's not necessarily going to matter so much where they position. But, this unit is pretty much always going to be just moving forward. It's got some walking to do to get into the action. But in doing so, I think I make a slight error. Let's see if you can kind of spot it, because I really do want to save activations late in the turn. Ideally, my last 2 activations for the 2 helicopter units. So I have basically the best information about where they can kind of zip around to, so they can get the best kind of charges or whatever. But while right now this helicopter seems safe, there's a lot of units here that can clear out the way, and then my opponent's able to move this unit forward and probably get a shot off over here. I think one difference, and this is actually now my second game of 1,000 points. I did get to play one practice game with this list against crews, but yeah, my second 1,000 point game. Obviously, there's just double the amount of units, double the amount of stuff going on, so it's not as easy to kind of pass what you should be activating first. There's just a lot more things you need to take into account, and it's easier to miss things like that. And something that generally been trying to do but not always succeeding is playing with a bit more patience. So here I actually move the miners up a little bit further than otherwise I would have liked, although the flip side is this position, if it gets charged in the front, stops my opponent getting on the objective. But initially I'd planned to have it a bit more conservatively, but I noticed that there was a potential kind of avenue this way for this stone thrower to chuck a rock over at these long rifles, so I get eager and move up there. In the past, that kind of thing has burnt me, particularly with things like the copters, where I am a bit kind of gun-ho, trying to get into position to use its ranged ability, and I'm realizing it's kind of out of position and doesn't really have anywhere to go. And as you see, just my opponent moving the units up, I've kind of exposed my flank here. Again, my kind of strategy was just to limit the number of charges my opponent would be able to get in this, first turn of charges. They're now probably going to be able to get multiple units onto this. Ideally, I think on a one-on-one fight, especially, my opponent chooses not to pop the Doom Bell. I should be favored, so I want to get those kind of one-on-one matchups as much as possible. But yeah, maybe a little bit eager there means that flank is now exposed, and actually I didn't take the opportunity when I could, or my opponent's just kind of like blocking this off anyway. So I instead go for a shot on the monstrosity here. I think at this point I'm not expecting many better opportunities to present themselves for the stone thrower. We're able to take off one wound. And yeah, this is the move here. You can see my opponent kind of thinking about it, moving down to get the shot on the copter. It's almost like a kind of, I don't know, like a what's it called, like discover check in chess. Move this out of the way and suddenly this is available. But again, with this 5,000 points, there's so much going on that it's kind of easy to miss. Not sure if my opponent was worried that they wouldn't be able to get there without them getting shot at. I haven't activated this unit yet, but either way, I believe they decide to move the monstrosity first. And they actually end up moving it to a position where I'm not entirely sure that this is now available. So I think I decide to risk that and again save that copter activation for, as late as possible. So I'm not sure, if this was like a bit of a bait from my opponent, trying to, showing the flank of the monstrosity here. I think I'm going to take it and move up to be outside of the arc there. Yes, I'm in the arc of the conscripts, which isn't great, but it allows a shot on the monstrosity, and you get one more wound through. So yeah, I did kind of end up splitting the shooting a little bit in this first round, as we see one more going through. able to take this monstrosity down to half and then just pick off a couple of the long rifles. So not brilliant, but as we've seen with my opponent's rolls from their long rifles, not a brilliant shooting turn for them either. And then I'm not sure, again, if this is a kind of like bait from my opponent, leaving this avenue here for a charge from the copter. Doom Bell's pretty tanky, and maybe they are thinking of popping the activation this turn as well, which means they'll get all of their attacks even onto, the flanking copter unit attacking the side. But I think I'm still going to take it. Getting this piece off the board is really big. And actually, I don't need to destroy it. I just need to win in combat score. And the Rat's notoriously poor bravery could allow it to run. And, then no more Hex of Ruin, no more Doom Bell. I also have the activation from the Engineer that I could put on to improve its defense. Not really going to help it dish out damage. And yes, maybe the ability to reroll ones in its shooting phase might be a bit wasted, but it could hopefully maybe allow it to tank some hits and then again win that in that all-important combat score. Here I'm thinking about a few different options for this copter, thinking about I could possibly get a line to charge one of these guys. My opponent did, I think, possibly bought the monstrosity around this side, noticing themselves that I had the potential flank and trying maybe to cut that off. But in the end, I think my sort of rational brain wins out against the bloodthirsty nature and decide to stick to the plan and kind of play it safe, be a bit more patient. So just move it here to take a shot on this monstrosity, one wound off, again splitting my attacks a little bit, but that's okay. And then I'm just trying to think about, it's like, yes, I could hide it behind this unit here, but this unit is likely going to move at some point, and what I really don't want is for copter to be like hidden here, and then all of a sudden this moves because of the charges, start the next turn, and it's facing down a couple of units of long rifles. So I look at, actually maybe, do I duck out? But this really is kind of, you see me doing this here. If I'd have thought about, I should have thought about this before moving it and taking the shot, and it would have made this whole thing quite a bit easier. But in the end, I decide that hopefully there will be enough kind of units gummed up in combat here to block those lines of sight anyway. Maybe a bit hard to tell, but this one unit of 4 is the only long rifle unit my opponent still has to shoot. I'm still worried that they can sneak some shots through here though onto this copter. So let's see what they decide to do. So it looks like they were kind of maybe looking at it. I'm pretty sure they would have the range, but in the end they decided to go for my commander's unit and they made the save. They did get a hit through though. So for those keeping score, that is the first hit of the game from our opponent's 4 units of long rifles. And yeah, as I've already said, I'm not going to be patient here. I am going to take this bait because the potential for taking out this Doom Bell unit is just too good. So charges now. And this is interesting first charge declaration from my opponent because it presents an opportunity now for me to make a charge with my commander's unit onto this Ratkin. And I can do that because I have the flank, so I can intercept. This Ratkin monstrosity wouldn't be able to intercept because it's not, I'm pretty sure it's further away. So yeah, now that this happens, I kind of have this available if I want it. Obviously, it means foregoing any of the shooting. I think this was the monstrosity that has only taken 1 wound so far. This is the one that's taken 3. And then, yeah, I ummed and ahed a lot over it. I was also considering, if I do make this charge, is that going to open up my engineer to some shooting? So deliberated a lot. Over here, yeah, make the obvious charges, but the miners, make the charge with the copter. My opponent has double teamed the miners, which I'm okay with. There, not many units in this, wouldn't call any units in this army disposable, but they're probably the most disposable. So yeah, in the end, we do decide to go for it. Maybe not the wisest decision, but at the very least, if they're tied up in combat, it means they're not getting shot at. I don't know. So as we get into turn 2, opponent has a decision to make because their fire-up shots against the stone throwers have not been well so far. But there we go. Finally, they get a couple of hits through. Stone thrower goes down to 1. I think they're a little bit scared of the damage from the range onto their long rifles that the stone throwers represent. So it does mean, though, that the engineer doesn't get shot at and goes over to me. And actually, because this is the unit that just went, gives me an opportunity to kind of sneak around the corner here, maybe get a shot off, but also hopefully keep it safe from any additional shooting. So yeah, in the end, that's what we end up doing. Only take 1 wound off with the main shot. And yeah, here we're going to use mechanical expertise for the reasons I mentioned before, increasing the defense, giving just that extra slim chance to win on combat score against the Doombow unit. In hindsight, looking back, this placement could have been slightly better. I think if I'd thought through the whole turn, I would have recognized that I would want the Berserkers to move up. I'm expecting this miners unit to die. So when I move the Berserkers up, I'm going to want the Berserkers to be closer to the monstrosity and potentially maybe even blocking this unit of conscripts. Effectively, what I was maybe a little bit guilty of here, which is something I think a lot of players fall into, is moving units based on how the board looks now rather than thinking about how the board is going to look at the end of the turn or when we come to the next charge phase. A really nice shot off there from the catapult. So I'm not sure if my opponent is going to use the Doombow activation. I guess one downside is, there is the potential for this to run off the board, in which case you kind of, want to use it before it goes. Could potentially wait 1 more turn for more of these units to come in. I'm not entirely sure, but I think a lot of this game is going to come down to this combat coming up. I really would like these miners to survive and not lose this point. That would mean the veterans can kind of come and start dealing with these units that are coming over rather than having to clean up here and potentially getting flanked. Basically, if I'm not winning these sort of like one-on-one fights, then my opponent's numbers are going to come to bear. And yeah, even these kind of shooter units, once we get into the dregs of the game, they're just as good as any other unit for kind of rear charging, getting flank charges, things like that. I think my sequencing was a little bit weird, a little bit off this game. I have the Ranger with the Hunter's Call ability. And I don't know if I was maybe waiting to see if I needed to use it this turn, because usually you would, if you're not going to activate it, you would just activate that unit first, because 9 times out of 10, it's better to be activating later in the turn when you have more information about where your opponent's going to be. So typically you'd do something like that early in the turn, but here, for whatever reason, I'm saving it till later. I don't know why. The long rifles finally find their form. in terms of accuracy, but the tanky Dwarves just kind of shrug it off, just losing one Berserker there to that volley. And my opponent kind of doing a similar thing, saving their Warlock until the final activation, maybe trying to decide whether or not to spend those spells, spend that Doombow activation, and there you go. Yep, they pop Hex of Ruin on this unit of miners. I think they're probably losing this combat anyway, so I don't mind that. And yeah, they do indeed pop the Doombow activation. Moving this unit of... Let's pause for a second. Moving this unit of veterans means that I did intentionally open up a kind of avenue to get the shot off there. Again, maybe it was a little bit more meant I was a bit more aggressive or a bit more hasty with this unit than I otherwise would have been, but that at least opens up that avenue. But yeah, let's get into combat and see how this goes. Pretty good number of hits through on the conscripts, and my opponent's only able to get 2 wounds through despite the frenzy from the bow, and my opponent runs. That's really good for me in that left flank because yeah, my opponent really doesn't have much to support it over there. As expected though, probably not going to go quite as well for the miners, but they're able to take the Ratkin monstrosity out with them. So that's really great for me because it means that slight little hiccup with the positioning of the Berserkers, and the Copter isn't going to matter. Even more importantly, let's take a look at this combat with the Doombell. That's 2 hits through from the Warlock, but we're saving on a 2-up against the Puny Wizard, and we make 3 hits ourselves. My opponent doesn't save any of them. That's a 4-up, 4-up, so what's that, 1 wound on average we go through, and we get 3 there. Doombell now cracks back, and we're able to save that as well. We've got the flank, and yeah, my opponent not able to saving on a 2-up and runs off the board. That's huge. Yes, my opponent did get value out of the Doombell and 1 hex, but that's another hex gone. That's my opponent's commander gone. That's really great for me. This combat doesn't go quite as well. We are able to win it by just by 1 though, but the monstrosity stays alive. Thankfully, this unit wasn't in position to get the flank. I believe they are going to take the flank, yeah, from the unit of long rifles there. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling a little bit more confident than I did, 30 seconds ago. Can take the charge on the bigger unit of long rifles. I think that's what I'm planning to do. So Berserkers are going to absolutely chew through the unit of conscripts. And what's huge about that bell going is like now these kind of scary blobs of rats all of a sudden quite a bit less scary. Even this kind of front charge is like kind of the Dwarves win that every day of the week. And here, even though yes, this long rifle unit is fleeing, it's going to leave my Copter exposed. I've done a number on enough of the long rifles. This unit's going to be charging in, so they're not going to have the volume of shooting to capitalize on this and take this Copter out before it becomes relevant again. Finally, that stone thrower goes down after doing really good work. And yeah, my opponent, slight mistake because this channel is still open, so I could have activated this one first, taken the shot and moved out the way, and then taken this one, but able to take out that unit of long rifles. We do rally here, but yeah, wisely, my opponent gets aggressive with the 1 remaining sort of long rifle duo. From the picture, it looks like anyway. It's like 1 model. Gets aggressive to get the rear charge there, hoping that they will charge off the board. My opponent positions to get the flank. I assume they have the flank open for either of these. Not sure that my commander's unit is going to survive this, but I do then have, I guess, the berserkers to hopefully follow up if they're, I'm not sure if they're just outside the range here. But yeah, we still have the copter, so we're able to counter my opponent's move there, threatening the flank and the flank here and the rear here, depending on how things shake out. My hunter whiffs their attacks, but the crossbowmen are able to finally bring down the second monstrosity. However, with the combined attacks of the monstrosity attacking back and from the long rifles, we're going to lose the combat and flee. So similar to what happened over here with the miners, take out monstrosity, but we lose the combat and flee. I'm going to take that, and as expected, the berserkers do an absolute job on this unit of conscripts, leaving one alive. A little bit annoying, but yeah, cannot complain. Again, as expected, the veterans are able to chew through the conscripts there. And then I don't know if I think I kind of glossed over it, but my opponent failed the rally test with this unit, which means I don't actually have to take this charge. I can kind of shoot at something, wait, even if they then rally, then I could take the rear charge if I want. But yeah, my opponent's going to get this. And thankfully, there is just space there. I was a bit worried that there wouldn't be space for my copter to kind of fit into the flank there. Going to prevent the charge from the chieftain there. My berserker's just out of range to counter this one. But all in all, I'd say we're in a fairly good position. Not only that, we've been ticking up the objective points. My opponent really for the entire game hasn't had any pressure on this left objective, and we were able to kind of clear out on the right over here as well. So at this point, feeling pretty good. We've kind of got them on the back foot, got them on the run. Sort of no matter what happens here, I'm able to position my berserkers so they can kind of come in and clean up. And yet, let's just use the shot from the copter there to take out that one unit. I equipped the engineer with the handgun, and I seemingly just completely forgot about it, because then just skipped over the activation there without even using it. I have to remember that for the next game. So I'm pretty happy with that. I was pretty tit for tat with my opponent's commander's unit and the copter. Both survive, which is fine because it exposes a flank to the berserkers. My commander's unit is going to lose this, but thankfully makes the bravery test. This unit does run off the board, but yeah, from here it's pretty much all she wrote. It's just really going to be a case of mopping up. In this tournament, points difference does matter. So yeah, you're going to see us play it out, and I'm just going to try to kill as much as possible while keeping as much of my stuff as possible, because it's like the different points difference in the remaining 2 turns. But yeah, pretty happy with how we played that one, I think. Few wrinkles to sort of iron out, but for the most part, I think we kind of stuck to the plan, were able to stay patient. And yeah, although I think a massive factor in that one was quite obviously the dice in those early stages, with my opponent just missing all of their shots. I think, I went into this one half expecting that once melee combat starts, half my army would be dead, but yeah, got lucky there. Great game from my opponent, but we are able to take this one 1300 points to 225. That'll do it for this one. Like, subscribe, comment, do that good stuff for the YouTube algorithm. Check out the Discord server and other PvP content creators in the description. Until next time, bye bye.